What's up, guys? Luke here from Spotlight on Spurs. We are back for another My Spurs preview. This time, the person who's decided to come on, who's going to go through all things Spurs, is Jim from So Spurs. How are we doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Luke. Yep, we've beaten Arsenal. New player inbound. Starting to feel a bit more positive again, which is nice. Yeah, good.
These are so strange. I'm literally doing one, and we've just lost out on Morgan Gibbs-White. The attitude, everything's really, really down. Then we beat Arsenal, it goes up. We sign a player, it goes up. It's the world of Spurs, I suppose. The world of Spurs. Why do we do it to ourselves, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it would be boring if it was straightforward, wouldn't it? It's sort of part of the fun. You've got to get the lows to appreciate the highs, and the highs hopefully convince you that the lows won't last forever. So yeah.
European champions. I'll just keep going back to that for the moment. Guys, as I always say, please make sure that you're obviously liking the video and subbing to both the channels. I had a quick check before we came on. Jim, I think you're trying to push on at 7.5k now. Is that right?
I think so. I haven't actually checked lately, but yeah.
I'm sure you're pushing up
it's
there.
around that. It's around that, yeah.
We have, as of yesterday, I think it was, we've now hit 1.2k. So we're on the road to 2k, and let's see if we can get Jim close to that 7.5. Be great for both of us when the video goes live. Right, we're going to start. We're going to head straight into it. Just a quick overview on your thoughts on last season. Obviously, we've already said about European champions, but what's your thoughts and feelings from on last year?
Look, I underestimated how painful it would be to sacrifice the league for a trophy. As a season ticket holder in the South, I think I didn't expect it to hurt so much going every week and having an expectation that you weren't going to win your home games. I'm used to supporting Spurs where even if we are mid-table, you win 70% of your home games. It was the away games that were always a struggle for us at Spurs. And when we obviously got Poch, things started to change and you started to win those away games as well. And then we really kind of ramped up the table. I'd never witnessed a season really where your home felt the opposite of a fortress. It felt like a broken castle that the opposition was just walking over the top of the walls and the moat was dry. It was just too easy for them to get in and kind of conquer you. So that really hurt, but it was completely outstripped those feelings by the end result. The thing that was most challenging last season, I think, was I was always kind of quite in that Postecoglou was the right person to change the culture of the club, whether you believe he was the right tactically, whether you believe he, was out of his depth or not in the Premier League. I guess that's up to you to decide. But I felt something that was not up for debate really, because it just felt so certain, was his ability to get people believing in him and believing that they could win things and get that culture into the club and the players was his main strength and his main ability, and he did that. And I know people will say, yeah, well, Spurs were second or first favourites the whole way through the Europa League. When you look at the teams who've gone out of cups to in the past, FC Mura, Sheffield United, relegated teams, Colchester, the list goes on. I still think the mentality has been the thing we always complained about, and I felt with Ange, if you got one of those opportunities, you wouldn't go out unexpectedly to those lower teams with year after year fallen out with. And it was right. It ended up coming to fruition. He pulled it off. And I think a lot of that was the belief in that final. It was just it was a kind of performance everyone says the worst final ever. I disagree. I think if Jose had managed that game, people would have said, oh, that's classic Mourinho. He always finds a way. And what Jose and Ange had in common, I think, was they had a dressing room that just really believed it was them versus the world. And I think Ange created that culture. So that was the main kind of thing that I really clung on to. And then, yeah, when he departed, it was a mixed feeling. It was kind of like the mic drop season 3 thing left me wanting to see what would happen. But equally, I'd be disingenuous if I said I didn't understand the decision to move on, and I didn't think appointing Thomas Frank was sensible, and probably by odds, if you looked at the data, the right move. Even though I'd have just kind of liked to see season 3 and then bring in Frank if it hadn't worked. But look, now Frank's in, I'm all aboard him. I think he's a great coach, and I'm excited for the future with him.
I have nothing to say. You've just echoed everything every bit of my fault. I joined YouTube basically back in Postecoglou just in the new year, and I was saying I think he's the right man for this season particularly. I think that under him we've got a chance of winning something, whereas under other managers I didn't think we did. And yeah, literally echo every single thing you've said, and I've also said that on podcasts that for me he had that sort of. Everyone just believed in him, even though others outside might not have. Everybody in the club just felt like, even in the final when he had the kind of interview, and he was saying, I could sense the nervousness around everyone, but he was very much saying, I wasn't nervous. I've been here. I know what it's like. I know it's a different level, but I know what it's like. I know how to win things where most of these guys have not been that level before. So completely agree. I would have loved to have seen season 3. However, the Anjal Brigade, if you want to call it that, I definitely see their points and labelled as the problem across everything across the club. And I think that was unfairly. I think there's loads of changes that were required, and some we're seeing the changes that have taken place this summer.
Yeah, I think the squad was just set up. I think in hindsight, we all entered the season very we all said at the start of the season, this squad is too inexperienced. It doesn't have enough senior players who have not done enough. And then when some of these issues were on tactics, but I'm saying a lot of them were amplified and made to look a lot worse because the players weren't. We didn't have the squad capable of doing what we were trying to do. He was left quite short on that front.
Yep.
And then suddenly it was like there was no sympathy for the squad not being what it should have been. It was, well, you should just play that academy kid there instead and rest. And now you're seeing his academy players go on loan to League One. You're like, well, they weren't even remotely near Premier League level. It's not as simple as just chucking a kid on who might have a stinker of a game, kill their confidence, everything else, just not a good environment for them to do. You're basically just throwing them to the wolves to give someone else a rest in the senior team. I think there was a bit of a kind of like middle ground there where he was left short and he could have managed the situation differently to make it less painful and less compounded. But he was definitely left short in that window. But I'd say what really impressed me of Andrew was how he kept the dressing room togetherness despite all those defeats, despite all the challenges, despite all the injuries. They all still utterly believed in him. Mm-hmm. And people often, we YouTubers go on here and go, draw an arrow and go, this player did this, we'd do that. So much more complex than that. It was kind of acting as if Angela's coaching team weren't stranded at his back post. Of course, they could see all those things. Mm-hmm. Fixing them is very different to what we think as fans. And we speak to professional coaches on our show sometimes about it. And they say, like, you've got to teach a human being who spent 20 years learning to play football like that to do something differently. Mm-hmm. Change their muscle memory. Also, you've got the teammates have to move to it. You've got to convince a whole group of people in a game environment to learn something new when you've got half a day's training, like every 4 days, because you're in this cycle of 2 or 3 games a week. It is so hard to make those changes when you're just in the doldrums of injuries, games every 3 days, to make those adjustments. So I think it was a really hard job and wasn't simple for him to solve. And some of the things we did better got overlooked. Like the set pieces got dramatically better as the season went on. Mm-hmm. And I think he was right to go backs against the wall in the Europa League and play cup football, and it worked.
It's very, very strange because a lot of the arguments is he never changed, he kept going the same thing, but we won it a completely different way. And yet the people that also say that he only has one way of playing and then slag him off going, it's the worst final ever. It's like, hang on a minute. We have to have some sort of balance here. It's either he's only got one set of tactics or he adapted very well. You can't have it pushed on it a little bit onto Thomas Frank's appointment. I think from personal point, it was a very underwhelming, essentially, when he was still in the job. However, when Ange left, and as you said, for me, I did have allegiance with Ange. I liked him. However, when he leaves my club, that's it. It's done with now. We're going to appoint a new manager. I'll get on board with that. It was underwhelming initially. However, when you look at actually what Frank brings, it does make a lot of sense to a lot of what Spurs require. So what were your thoughts on Thomas Frank's appointment?
I think it's like it was a stability appointment. It was right. We need to just get the foundations of consistency back in place, because consistency underpins consistency. Well, I think two things underpin success football clubs, and consistently good recruitment is number one. If you put pretty much any Premier League manager into with Liverpool's squads, they would all be in the top four. But if you gave Arne Slot Spurs' squad from last season, they would not win the league. So I think often we can compare managers without comparing the fact they've got very different resources, expectations, teams. And it doesn't mean Arne Slot isn't brilliant. It doesn't mean that Iraola or Ange would have won the league with Liverpool's squad. But what I'm saying is they've done infinitely better with a squad like that.
Yeah.
So good recruitment underpins the chances any manager has of success. So Frank needs that, and I think he understands his place as part of a process, as Ange was happy to do as well with this new recruitment structure. They'll look at it as a very analytical process. He's shown he's good at developing young players, tick. He's good at getting more out of senior players, tick. He's good at managing players who are slightly over the hill and finding new roles and adaptations for them. That's another tick. So, and he's easy with the media, and I think he will take Spurs fans on a journey by explaining why he does things, which we didn't often have with Ange, which I know we were big sympathisers. We backed him, and I really adored who he is as a person, and would have loved that season 3, like you say. But now Frank's in, I'm kind of, I think he will do, at the end of the game, if we lose, he will explain and show you he understands exactly why we lost. Even though Ange may have understood that, he wouldn't. He would kind of say, if I have to explain this to you, you're an idiot, kind of essentially, and kind of get quite grumpy about it and walk off. Whereas Frank would go, no, I hear you, I see you, I see Pedro Porro stranded at the back post. What I'm struggling to do is move this player to here so that I can cover them. It's more he'll go on the journey with you, and I think there'll be a level of, okay, the manager understands. They get it. They get what we're saying and we're seeing, which is reassuring that we're all on the same journey together. And I think Frank's brilliant at that. I like that he's earned his roles through being patient and improving himself, worked his way up through clubs rather than hopping clubs.
Yep.
So on 2 occasions, he's done that really well. And that gives me reassurance where he's the type of manager who will say, in my head, I'm here for 5 years, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I'm not my job here is not to go and impress Man City and get the job over there. My job here is to do well at Spurs over the next 5 years. And I've got a plan of how I'm going to get there. And he will have a plan, and he will bring others into his plan as well, like Johan Langer. I'm sure he'll have an extremely close relationship with. We know they're very close already. Yeah. I think he makes sense on so many levels, and I really hope he succeeds. And I'm all aboard for it. I was initially disappointed because but that was just my emotion and bias from it not being Postecoglou. But now he's in, and I've had time to reflect. I think it's the right thing to do. I think the club took the braver thing to do, which was to get rid of your only trophy-winning manager in 20 years and bring in someone else who many would say is underwhelming because of where they've come from. But I'm really happy with that overall.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, as I said, a lot of these questions, they kind of intertwine. So in terms of Frank, what do you think he brings? And I don't necessarily just mean tactically. I mean, from a personable point of view, as you said, it seems very much in a way, I think the way he does it, in a way Ange do it in terms of being together. I think both of them do that. But I think they target it in very different ways, as you've already said. Ange is very much us against the world, whereas Frank almost, it seems more like a friendlier environment where everybody's our friend and we're all in it together as a family sort of thing. So where do you see, what do you see Frank bring into Spurs? What was when Levy drew up his list and went, he's the guy? What were the reasons for it? You kind of already touched on some, obviously.
Yeah, I think he's more suited to managing a league campaign. Frank, he'll, like you say, it's more kind of very pragmatic, sensible. I know you're going to be tired. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's normal to lose games. All that kind of stuff. Just very real. Very Ange was very real. He was, but realistic. I mean, very compromising on what understanding where we really sit in reality. Whereas Ange is screw that. If there's a 1% chance, we're going to take it.
Yeah,
and there's pros and cons. I think we always went quite far in the cups. We went far in the League Cup as well under Ange and obviously the Europa League. I think with Frank, we'll probably see ourselves walking away, rotating more in cups again, going out of those competitions a bit earlier, because he's going to use a data approach and say, we don't have the squad to do 4 comps. Which 2 are we going to prioritize? I'm going to focus on the league as one. and I'd be interested to see which other one he focuses on. But I think he'll take an approach like that. But the good thing is, I think we'll get more consistency in the league. We'll see more changes tactically depending on who the opposition is, which will be interesting. I'm intrigued to see how he copes with that during the European and domestic period where you've got game every 3 days, because you don't have time to get everyone on the training pitch, review the opposition, and change things as much. So I'm intrigued to see how he handles that. And he's got more teams to scout out each season now as well. But he's made his way as a coach by always bettering himself. And all these managers, I think, are they're some of the most driven people on the planet. To take that job as a hook manager, you have to be a bit nuts. You never see your family, you never see your friends, constant stress, constant criticism. You live and breathe your job. They're all so driven, and they've all gotten to where they are by self-improvement and drive. And we've got to give Frank the opportunity to improve and learn and adapt going through this journey with us. So I just hope we can say year one, Thomas, we're excited to see the tactical adaptability. We're excited to see you improve some of these young players. We're excited to see you put players in new roles who are maybe a bit lost onto what their purpose was. A Kulusevski, no one really knows what his role is. Maybe Frank will be the one to identify what that is. And I'm excited to see all those things, but he will make mistakes, and that's fine. But let's give the guy the patience and loyalty we gave Postecoglou and give him a shot at this. And I think he needs patience and a few years to show us what he's really made of.
Completely agree. And it's almost like you've pre-watched the questions, because you kind of went into it there in terms of what concerns you have. And that's definitely one for me, the 3 games a week, how they're going to do that in terms of Frank's very much virtually always throughout his whole period has had a week to prepare for the next opposition. Whereas this is very much going to be a couple of days, sometimes barely even training, depending on how far you are playing, if you're away the following league game, etc. So, maybe concerns, maybe unknowns. What sort of unknowns do you think we kind of have with Frank, or do you think you've kind of already covered that in the previous answers?
Well, yeah, the unknowns is obviously the 3 days a week bit as well. Also, I think it's the media scrutiny will be bigger, as we mentioned before. How will he handle it when we start becoming the butt of jokes and start being called, people start digging at you and start kind of saying, oh, typical Tottenham, this, that, and the other. At Brentford, it was always, oh, well, they're doing so well with the resources they've
great
got.
Club.
Oh, when things go down, downwards a bit, it's like, well, who can blame them? They're working off nothing here. What a brilliant job they've done to get in the Premier League. There's no real kind of mass scrutiny period they'll be in. Spurs, the second you lose a game 3-0, it's, is Frank out of his depth? Was this too big of a step? So it's not just about him handling that, because I think he'll be fine to handle that criticism himself. He's not soft-skinned. But I think where it'll be interesting is, can he keep the dressing room together when people are pointing fingers at the manager? And it's like those things that personal lives work. If everyone says that person's this, that person's this, it can start to seep in, and you can start to doubt those people as well. It takes a very strong character to resist that. And it will require Frank to be very consistent and unwavering. Will he be able to? I'm sure I think he will. And I think he'll be okay. But he'll have to show a very brave face and consistent face in front of that dressing room when things aren't going well. And we are going to have tough patches. Every team does. And that's absolutely fine. I just really hope as a fan base, we can just be a part of the positive voice behind him to give him a true opportunity to succeed and not waver and start wobbling and saying, oh, was he the right appointment after 2 or 3, bad results.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And actually, part of my concerns as well is the way the fan base reacts to things. So, for instance, I have seen people from the 3 previous friendlies taking away the Arsenal result. I've seen people kind of be like, see, Ange wouldn't have done this and Ange wouldn't have done that. And it's like, it's pointless. Ange is gone. Don't worry about that. It's a brand new era. However, yesterday, there was loads of people that were going, oh, well, Ange has not beaten the North London Derby. And it's like, why do you bring up that? I don't understand why that's our first fault. Because if you want to go down that route, then the people that you're responding to are just going to say, well, he's won trophies and you're one. Let's just forget about Ange. It's done with. Appreciate what he's done. But I don't understand the constant comparisons. But I did think that this was going to be a problem, regardless of who was the manager this year. Because if Ange was still here, you would have had the Ange out saying every single time we lost a game, drew a game, pre-season was a bad. Why is he here? He shouldn't be here. So I felt like this was almost the inevitable, which is not great as a fan base.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to see the season 3 out, because I feel like when you leave a book unfinished, it's always going to leave those kind of those old arguments to bob
Yeah.
back up again, and people will start to. It will happen again. It'll
Yep.
be, oh, we would have never gone out the FA Cup in the X round if we had had Postecoglou. He'd have never have accepted that. As soon as things are going well and we, get an away win against City, oh, I told you, we've finally got a tactical manager who can utilise this. Like,
Yep.
let's not make it about Postecoglou and Frank. This is about Tottenham Hotspur. This is about us trying to finally put together a squad that sets a manager up for success. You can't compare two managers of different squads as well. And they're going to have different squads. The squad is already 2 players better than it was last season. It's already going to have a better 6 in Paulino. Yes, he's got his limitations, but to me, he's going to improve the quality of that first team, as is Kudus going to improve the quality of the first team. We're not done the transfer market. It's completely different. He's juggling Champions League instead of Europa League. That's a bigger challenge, though, on the flip side. So he's got different challenges. Let's not make. They're both brilliant people and brilliant managers for different reasons, and that's absolutely fine. You don't need to love one to hate the other, or hate one to love the other. You can just say both are good, qualified coaches. Both have got their challenges to navigate through at Spurs, and the one thing we can do as supporters right now is not compare them, but create them a great atmosphere and support these guys. And yeah, I just really want Frank to succeed, and I want to do my small part of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And as I said, it's really weird in the YouTube space, and you'll know this as well. It's almost like you can't like both. You can't say, yeah, I really backed Ange, and actually I really like Frank. It's almost like you have to pick a side. You can't have both. So I think from a personal point of view, Frank is absolutely top drawer. I've always liked him, and my reservations in and pointing him was nothing to do with personality, character, anything like that. It was just that he hadn't competed at that level before, and I don't know whether he's going to. And that was solely the my kind of thoughts around it. We probably won't touch on this for too long because I think everybody is almost in the same boat. Probably every guest has said the same thing. Basuma's probably one that goes. Hill, Solomon, mostly are saying Richie and Son. They're the only 2 really that we could probably go into, because I would imagine you probably agree on the rest. But who do you think Spurs need to kind of get out the door?
Yeah, you mentioned all the obvious ones. Like Richie, I'd only sell if we identify a backup striker.
Yeah,
who can come in. I wouldn't sell Richie and then be looking for a backup striker.
I agree.
We go in leaving just Solanke, and I wouldn't go in this season looking to find a backup to Solanke. I'll be looking for someone to challenge Solanke for a spot and let those 2 fight it out for a place. Son's obviously the big one that just controversial, because you've got a player who in a bad season is delivering 15 plus goals contributions. So to kind of brazenly just be like, get rid, old, done, finished, is a bit, I think is a bit brash and oversimplifying how much of a loss he is. But equally, if you get a decent money offer for a player that benefits that player, you've got to consider it. And I think it's more about like, Son is joining a Frank project, which is probably 3 to 5 years, but at his age, he's not going to be here to see this project out. So does Son want to be part of year 1 of this project and then probably not get the fruits of his labor at the end of it, because he's going to be, 35, 36 by that time? Or does Son want to go, actually, you know what? I'm going to go to Germany. I'm going to go to Spain. I'm going to join a club that is in the final phase of their project, and I am one of the finishing pieces of that, and have a shot at a trophy this year. Because, I don't have much time left. If he can find that for himself, brilliant. Well done, Sonny. Love to see you do that again. Love to see you prove everyone wrong. Bang in 15 plus goals in a season in another league. Lift another trophy. And it's kind of like Spurs have got some money and found someone who's going to be part of a 5-year project with us because of their age. So both clubs kind of get what they want. And in a dream world, I think people would say, if we don't need the money, you keep Son and you still sign another winger, and Son has a great value in the squad still. But it's not that simple. We've got these non-homegrown quotas we've got to stick by in the squad, and he's one of those spots. And when it's between Son, you're not going to get rid of Tell at his age. You know what I mean? So, just signed him. So it's a tough one. But yeah, that's the major one. I think he's going to go after the tour. Not saying it's my preference. I'm just saying that's what I think will happen for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree again, and I don't really have a preference on the Son situation. I'm very much of the opinion that Son should decide what he wants to do. If Son says I want to go, then we should absolutely try and facilitate that move. As obviously, it does have to work for Spurs. We're not going to say a couple of million, but at the same time, if he does say that no, I want to stay, then it's not up to him to dictate whether he is a starter or whatever. That's down to Frank to say, I see you as more of a squad option or someone that the younger players could learn from. So you'll be in and around it, but you won't be the key kind of guy you've always been. So again, completely agree. This is interesting because again, this changes guest by guest because of what goes on. But obviously, we have had the announcement that it looks like João Palhinha is now going to be taking his medical, so he's probably going to sign for Spurs. Because I say probably because the here we go doesn't mean as much since Morgan Gibbs-White. So, but he looks like he's going to get over the line. It's going to be a loan deal, so shouldn't therefore take any money away from the current transfer market that we have. Although there is an option to buy, but that will be obviously for next year to decide. Are you happy with the current business that we've got? To Kai, obviously Vuskovic has come in. 2 permanents have come in terms of Danso and Tel, and then Kudus and Palhinha. Are you happy with that so far?
If we finish the season today, I would say it's not enough, and I'd be disappointed with the window. So far, I think we've done the minimum of what we need to do for this part of the window, but we're still actually no, I would say we're still a bit behind. But what I'd say is Kudus as an individual, very good, elevates the quality of the first team, and we said we want Premier League proven players who elevate the quality of the first team. Is Kudus that? Yes, that's one. I think we need 4 in total, though. Is Paulinho going to do that? Yes. And I know he's got limitations. People say he's not creative. He's just a ball smash winner. Mm-hmm. If we'd signed him 18 months ago when the links to Bayern were happening, everyone would have been gassed up, messing themselves in excitement, been, oh, yeah, we've got this. He's such a sensible signing. I think because he's now seen as a bit of a reject for Bayern, people are more like, oh, he's not as exciting. But he's an experienced Premier League proven midfielder who is coming to us on a no-risk contract in his prime year. Mm-hmm. I think he's exactly the type of signing we need, as long as he's accompanied by another midfielder that's more of a different profile. The Gibbs-White profile can play in a 10, can drop deep and create. Mm-hmm. I think Paulinho, then, we saw how vulnerable Bentancur last season playing deep. Putting him up alongside someone like Paulinho is going to elevate the quality of him. Same with Lucas Berrival, playing him deeper alongside of Paulinho elevates him. So I think he's a very sensible and good signing that we need. But yeah, we still have to get a left wing back. That's absolutely imperative. I think we can get away with having Davies as backup to Van de Ven, but it's leaving Frank light, leaving him with things to do, especially when he's your most injury prone player in the squad. I think you're going to be significantly worse off points wise. I mean, notably by not having a great backup there. That's probably a bit of level up from Ben. And no disrespect to Ben, I think he's got value in the squad, but he should be 3rd choice to me, not 2nd choice in that position. And then it's more then I think that's kind of the minimum you need to do. It's that other midfielder, a backup wing back, and if you sell Richarlison, a backup striker. But more importantly, all these players continue to be improvements on the first team rather than the younger players. I think we've got enough young players for now, and sure, sprinkle a couple in the background if you want, but don't let that impact who you sign elsewhere.
Completely agree, and I've been saying it since I joined YouTube, essentially, that I'm sick and tired of signing good squad players. We need to sign good players that improve the 11 to therefore make the first 11 become the squad players, which therefore brings your squad quality up overall. And again, we'll kind of go into it again. You kind of touched on it. So in terms of who you think Spurs still need, I think most of the expectation in this fan base was a defensive-minded midfielder, which is Palhinha. So we'll tick that. A lot of people felt Brennan Johnson wasn't to the required standard, so we needed a right winger. Kudus has ticked that off, and then the rest of them is kind of your left centre back, left back, potentially one that plays both. You've kind of touched on it, and then I think there is almost some expectancy as well within the fan base that a sort of another, maybe a wide player / forward, or maybe one of each, depending if you're being really greedy, which is completely unlike Spurs signing 5 first-team players. But are they the sort of targets that you want in terms of position, and do you have particular names? And then lastly, just to caveat that, what's your number one target where you think, actually, if we can go and get him, you kind of as a sort of level player, who's the one player that you would want to bring in?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have specific names in mind, really. I'll be just throwing them around
Yeah.
Because I do feel there's players in leagues that we have less focus on that
Definitely.
would be available at lower prices with just because they don't have that Premier League experience and the homegrown status. That would be better value. And I I don't watch them enough to pick them out, but I think it'd be crazy to say that James Maddison's better than every other 10 across Europe that's available for 50 million quid. He's better than all of them. He's the best value. I think that's not a dig at Madders. I think he's a good player, but you know what I mean? I think that's the case of multiple positions. There's good players out there that elevate the quality of the team. It's just about getting players that have got a good injury track record of not getting injured and getting 2 or 3 more of them into the squad. So you've just got a consistently higher level squad the next year. I think we need we've got Paulinho and Kudus already. I think it's minimum we need 2 more, and I'd prioritise the midfielder. Another midfielder I completely prioritise because you can't be one injury away from being back to the same midfield as last year and having all the same issues. And then, I would be looking for if Son is sold and Richarlison's a question mark, it's got to be that left winger who can play as a forward. I know we got Tell, but that ready now,
there's a
like
drop off. There's a drop off when Tell plays up front. I think quite significantly.
Maybe someone who's predominantly a forward and can play left wing rather than the other way around, which Tell's predominantly left winger who can play forward. I think you need a reverse option there.
Yeah, completely.
Oh, and a wing back. Can't be one injury away from just having, Archie Gray at wing back again.
I actually think that at this moment in time, if the squad, if the transfer window ended, that is the option. I think Spence is the cover at left back, and I think Archie Gray will be the cover at right back, unless we start obviously getting some players through the door. And obviously we do need to shift quite a lot out, being such a large squad. And I think some of that is dependent on kind of who goes out the door. These next couple are just kind of quick fire if you want. Obviously you can take as much time as you want if you want to go into more detail. But you're one to watch for this season, and I'll say it again, but quite a lot of people I think seem to think that this is all based on just young players, Mikey Moores, etc. But this is anyone, because let's be real, last year no one really performed at the level you would hope or expect to. So Kudus could be your player, Bergvall, Vuskovic even. Like, who's the one player that you think, he's the one that I'm eager to see next year?
Yeah, I think Matisse Tell will be the most improved, is my guess, working under Frank. And that's partly just because of his age, his potential, and finally getting minutes, but also because I think Frank will be a good manager for him. And he's going to get opportunities on the left wing because that's just not a strong part of our team at the moment. If those players are sold, like we said, in Son and Richarlison. So I think he's probably the one for me. And then in terms of the more experienced players, I think Romero is going to be our best player. I think he was last season and he will be again. But Solanke's one to watch as well. It'd be interesting to see if Frank can get him back to scoring more goals like he did in his latter stage of his career before he joined us. So yeah, he'd be my senior player to watch, I think.
Yeah, we've one of the next question is around Solanke. One of the answers from the previous guest was around Solanke, and he actually thinks that Solanke is going to get 20 league goals, which will be a huge improvement on what he got this year. But moving on to your hot take for 25-26, obviously ideally Spurs related, but it could be caveat to that. So we've had top 4, top 6 Solanke to score 20 league goals. What would be your idea, your take that goes against the sort of expectation within the fan base, I guess?
Gosh, what's the hot take? It's a tough one, isn't it? I think Porro will win Player of the Season for us. I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
That for me, funnily enough, I had a live stream recently, and I was actually going through Frank's tactics, and I was saying that I think Porro could have an unbelievable season this year. I think in both tactical setups, in terms of, it seems from pre-season that we're going to have a fullback that kind of becomes a little bit more of a centre back and the other one goes forward. I think Porro benefits in both systems, whether if he's one that sits back in, his passing ability is absolutely incredible. And I think if we got a dynamic left winger who's constantly making, almost son of old, constantly making runs in behind, Porro's long ball capabilities, we see it when Maddison won the penalty in the Europa League. His ball striking and long ball ability is absolutely incredible for that switch and also down the line. And then also, if he's the one that actually goes further forward, his crossing ability and again his long passing ability is insane. So I have a feeling that although he's a defender, I feel like in this tactic he could end up being very, very good. So it might be a strange one to some, but for me, I completely agree. I think Porro's gonna have a very, very good season. And then the last thing, just to round it all off, the expectations for the season in terms of the competitions. You mentioned it earlier about the cups, maybe a little bit more flexibility around that in terms of changes and that sort of stuff. I think that because we won the Europa League, it means that there's going to be less pressure on we have to win a trophy this year. So it could end up being that the Carabao Cup specifically is more of a youth cup, and a lot of the youth players are going to be playing in these cups. Obviously, all of this depends on who we draw. If you draw City in the first round in every cup, then it's going to be quite difficult. But what are your expectations? What sort of level do you expect, or do you have any expectations? Because as you said, we're probably going to be focusing on the league and Champions League, and we'll also add in the Super Cup there as well, because we often forget about that.
Expectations are, I think, will be top 8. Like there's a world in which the best case scenario for Spurs is they get into the Champions League through 5th place or 4th. Yep. And I say there's a hope of that because Villa and Newcastle are struggling this window and they've got Europe as well. And I don't think our squad's, I think you could argue you got a better squad than them. So I think there's a chance there. But equally, I think if we were to come 8th or something like that, I'm not saying we should sack the manager. I think you've got to give them time there in a more mature part of their projects where they've had time to instill how they play and everything else. So they've got an advantage there. But I think City, Liverpool and Arsenal are just going to be way too far ahead. And Chelsea have actually bought pretty well, bought some really good players. So I can't see us, unless they have a real bad season, catching them straight away. But you never know. There's always surprises in these seasons. I think, like I said, we'll be much more rotating, much more heavily in cups. I think the League Cup will just be, like you said, playing second teams. So therefore I can't see us going far in that competition. But I hope that Frank puts some prioritization on the FA Cup. It would be nice to see us go a bit further in there.
Yes.
That would be nice to see, and it will be interesting to see if he does that because, that's also another way into Europe, right? Yeah. Not the Champions League, but you get Europa League. You get Europa League when the FA Cup, don't you?
Yeah. That's because Palace have been dropped out of it to the conference, haven't they? So I think it's Europa League.
So I think that would be a sensible thing to do, and I'd like to see it. So I think we'll go further in the FA Cup than the League Cup. And we'll finish. I'll be optimistic and say we'll finish 5th, but I wouldn't complain if we.
There's a hot take as well, and there's the Spurs one as well. We'll go with 5th. I completely agree. Champions League, I think most people are just saying be competitive. Hopefully, we can get out of the league stage, potentially the first knockout round, and then that very much is who you draw. But it seems that most people are effectively saying just be a little bit more competitive. So if we lose games, we don't lose them by big score lines. We don't go out to easy clubs, that sort of thing. So how amazing would it be if we got, say, an 8th, 7th place finish and won the FA Cup? It would just be, the FA Cup's the one this year where obviously leagues and Champions League are gone. They're not realistic. But if we was to win an FA Cup, that would be a pretty huge statement from Frank. And then last thing, just to touch on Super Cup, have you got any expectations in that? PSG looked like an absolute juggernaut until Chelsea played them, and then I think fears have dampened a little bit, but still a very, very good team.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I wouldn't be surprised if we won it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we lost it. It's kind of like it's cup football. I think the advantage we've got is it'd be interesting to see if all these extra minutes they've had to play PSG in the Club World Cup is going to be a massive hindrance and they're just knackered and fed up with it, or if that's an advantage for them to have played all that extra football and already had, not have had to kind of regroup and start again with a new manager. But I think we'll do better than people think. I think people are expecting us to get tonked, and I don't think we are. I think we'll hold our own in there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went to penalties. I think it will probably go to pens.
There we go. There's another hot take. He didn't have a hot take, and now he's had 4 of them. It's brilliant. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, as I say, it'd be very, very nice to be able to compete against PSG. I think the preseason towards the end, the tough games that we've got are going to stand us in good stead. And obviously, as well, they don't come back. Their players won't be coming back till quite close to that game. So hopefully, fitness is a bit of an issue, but we shall see. That's everything for all of the questions. Jim, as I said, thank you very much for coming on. Guys, as I said at the start, please go over and like the video, sub to Jim. As I said, it very much brings a different sort of aspect of football, which is very, very, it's really enjoyable. I love listening to it. I've been watching him for a long time. I'm always commenting on the videos, which you should be doing as well. So yeah, just a massive thank you to everyone. Support on the channel for me has been incredible recently. Well, since we started really. So as I said, hit 1.2k. So hopefully we can get to maybe 2k before the start of the season. We shall see. So last thing from me, as always, come on, you Spurs. See you
Go on,
later,
you
guys.
Spurs.
Thank you.